Thanks, Jen, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. So I am Michelle Sear. I'm Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the Division of Biology and Medicine. And on behalf of Brown University and the Division of Biology and Medicine, I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate in this afternoon's promotions workshop for clinical and clinician educator faculty. As Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, one of the offices that I oversee is the Office of BioMed Faculty Administration, which supports more than 2,000 faculty in the division. We facilitate the recruitment, appointment, retention, and promotion of faculty across the 4 basic science departments, the 14 clinical departments, and 2 hybrid departments. One of the ways in which we support our faculty is through informational workshops such as this one. And I'm also available if any groups of faculty, departments, divisions would like to have a smaller, less formal session. So similar to last year, we've decided to split this event into 2 workshops. Formerly, we had one large workshop for all 5 of the promotion tracks. The splitting of the workshops has allowed us to focus on the different needs of the 2 groups of medical faculty. The clinical tracks faculty, who are the clinician educator and clinical tracks, and the academic tracks faculty, who are on the teaching scholar, research scholar, or the Perens research tracks. The academic track faculty workshop will be held next week, November 16th. So before we really get started, I'd like to thank and recognize the groups who've made this workshop possible. First of all, the Office of BioMed Faculty Administration, and especially Heather Robichaux, who did so much to make this all happen. And I also would like to thank the Office of Continuing Medical Education. I'd also like to thank the Office of Faculty Professional Development for promoting this workshop through their email to the listserv. Our panelists and breakout session presenters, I'd also like to thank because they have so graciously given of their time to share their wisdom and experience around the promotions processes. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the Clinical Faculty Advisory Committee, or CFAC, for co-sponsoring this workshop. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Philip Salko, who's a clinical assistant professor of family medicine and clinical assistant professor of orthopedics, and is the current chair of CFAC. He's going to speak to us about CFAC and the work that it does to help and support our faculty. So Bill, are you there? And I will turn it over to you.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Hi, everyone. So yes, I stepped onto the board of the CFAC a few years ago, and now I'm the current chair of the Clinical Faculty Advisory Committee. We represent clinical and clinician educator track faculty and acknowledge and promote their essential role in the success of the academic education enterprise at the medical school. One important thing that we are involved with is the Dean's Excellent in Teaching Awards, and honors are given to clinical faculty who demonstrate outstanding skills as educators. We're clinical faculty, we're the lifeblood of our medical school and deserving of recognition. And we hope that the CFAC can help facilitate expression of the university's appreciation for the expertise and teaching, which we provide, you, we, us. And we look forward to exploring new and unique ways of highlighting the commitment. And this past year, we've been involved a lot of conversations that we're very happy to be involved with previous conversations about the mergers of the hospitals and such, putting our input. And it's interesting and helpful to see working with so many different providers of so many different areas of the state, not just locally right at the medical school or locally with Brown University and the main hospitals that they work with. So we represent everyone across the state. And I think we calculated it was 1,700 different clinical faculty across the state. I think that's the number. Yeah. But happy to be involved and happy to be in support as well. We have some great success stories of certain faculty members that didn't think they were being appropriately appreciated or recognized, and they came to us as a committee and we brought it up, and the medical school is very willing to listen and guide us and then react as appropriate. And so when you volunteer your time for the medical school, the medical school appreciates that, and that's kind of where we come into play as a liaison for all clinical faculty.
Great. So thanks so much, Phil. Thanks for all the work that you do and the important work that CFAC does. And I would love to echo your sentiments that the clinical faculty is really, it's the lifeblood of the medical school. We couldn't do what we do without all of you. And we are absolutely committed to finding ways to recognize you appropriately. So again, thanks so much, Phil. And thanks to CFAC for co-sponsoring this workshop.
Happy to be involved. Thank
Great.
you.
So before I begin my presentation, I'm going to start with some logistics. All of these things seem to start with logistics, right? So the first hour of this workshop is being recorded. So just a warning about that. And it will be later available for viewing on the BioMed Faculty Administration website. As we proceed through the session, please submit any questions that you have through the chat function directly to Alex Kelleher. So Alex is waving right there, and Alex is the director of the Office of BioMed Faculty Administration, and she's going to be monitoring the questions that come through throughout the program. You'll also be able to ask questions of our panelists after we have the panel discussion. So please feel free to prepare those questions as they arise. And I'd also like to thank those of you who submitted questions in advance of the program. Alex has a list of those questions, and we'll be able to be feeding those to the panelists as well. We're going to start with a general overview of the promotions process, followed by the panel discussion, during which time there will be ample opportunity to ask questions that arise. And I'd also like to, mention again that there are those pre-submitted questions that we'll be using with the panel discussion as well. So at this time, I'm going to do what is always a little dicey, and that is try to share my screen. Oh, and I should just mention the third part of the workshop is a breakout into individual sessions for the clinical track faculty and the clinician track faculty. So when we get to that point in the session, you'll be directed to breakout rooms for one of those two tracks. So here I go to share my screen. And did that work? Yes, thank you, Matt, for the thumbs up on that one. Great. So as we've said, you're here at the Faculty Promotion Workshop for the Clinical and Clinician Educator faculty tracks. And so the goals of the workshop are really quite basic. First, to provide the basic information about the faculty tracks, the promotion dossier, the promotions process, and the timeline for promotions. My hope is that we are going to be able to dispel some myths that may be circulating about the promotions process. We'll obviously be sharing promotion tips. Specifically, the panelists are going to be giving us their wisdom about what are their favorite promotion tips. And as I said before, there'll be ample opportunity to answer your questions. So first, the two tracks that we're addressing today, one is the clinical track, and the titling for that track is Clinical Professor or Clinical Associate Professor of Department X. So Phil would be Department of Family Medicine and Department of Orthopedics. For the Clinician Educator track, the titling is Professor of Department of X, Clinician Educator. So this graphic depicts our numbers in the various tracks. So we have 5 tracks across the School of Medicine. As you can see in this depiction, first of all, there are over 2,000 faculty that are affiliated with the medical school. There are approximately 1,000 in the clinical track and almost 600 in the clinician educators track. So as Phil said, there are about 1,600 faculty in the 2 tracks that we're really addressing today. And then the other of the tracks, the Perens Research, the Teaching Scholar, the Research Scholar, and Pre-track make up the remainder of the 2,200 faculty. So much smaller numbers in those tracks. So now let me just present some of the standards and criteria for the various faculty tracks. So this slide is relatively busy, and I'm sorry about that, but I think it's useful to be able to see across the various tracks at the associate professor rank, what are the criteria that are required, that are not required, and those that are positively considered. So we've highlighted the clinical track and the clinician educator track to make this easier for you to sort of navigate. And you'll see that there's a lot of similarity between the two tracks. Where there's a difference is in the requirement for scholarly productivity and publications. So for the clinical track at the associate professor rank, publications are positively considered, but not required. And in the clinician educator track, they are required at the associate professor rank. And then everything else is pretty much the same. The teaching, mentoring, or advising excellence is expected in both tracks. The clinical contributions are expected in both tracks. And then service contributions are positively considered for both tracks. Let's see if I can. Now this is looking at the same criteria across the various tracks at the professor rank. And so here you're going to see some differences that arise. And most notably at the professor rank, the reputation that is expected is a national reputation, both in the clinical tracks and the clinical track and the clinician educator track. Everything else remains pretty much the same, except for the clinical track, the scholarly productivity is actually required at the professor rank. So again, this just gives you an idea of where the tracks differ and where there are differences across the ranks of associate and full professor. This is just another way of looking at this. So this is specific to the clinical track, and it's looking at the major criteria at the associate professor rank and at the full professor rank. And what you'll see here is where the criteria don't differ between the ranks, it goes across the entire row. So 100 hours of teaching or more is expected, both at the associate and full professor, high-level skill as a practitioner. But where there's a difference between the associate and full professor is in the area of scholarship, where the scholarship is required at the full professor rank. And for reputation, it goes from a regional reputation in the area of expertise to a national reputation in the area of expertise at the professor rank. And here is a similar graphic for the clinician educator track. Again, looking at the associate professor rank and the full professor rank. Substantial involvement and excellence in teaching, advising, and/or mentoring is expected across both ranks. More than 200 hours of teaching and/or service is expected across both ranks. Clinical contributions, important contributions to a clinical or research program, scholarly activity is expected across both ranks. And the reputation goes from a regional reputation to a national reputation in the area of expertise at the full professor rank. So I'm sorry, I think these slides got a little wonky, but I'm hoping that you can still see what this is all about. So this is a heads up that there will be a new criterion added to the standards and criteria, and this is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. In 2021, a working group convened and made a recommendation to the various BioMed advisory bodies to include in the standards and criteria an expectation of a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for all tracks of faculty at all ranks. So it was decided, after it was approved by all of those advisory bodies, to go into full effect on January 1st in 2024. That was in order for faculty to have ample opportunity to think about their activities in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to be able to include them in their materials for promotion. Again, fully effective in 2024. But at this point, we're very much encouraging faculty, departments, and promotions committees to highlight the activities that our faculty have around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I encourage you to do that. We do have metrics that have been included as examples of DEI activities in the various domains of your activities, and those are available at the BioMed Faculty Administration website. And I think they can be really instructive for you. So there are metrics for DEI in the clinical area, in teaching, in research, and in service, so that you can see those and see what kinds of activities you are doing that that might meet that criterion. So what are the components of the promotion dossier? Trust me, it's really not this bad, but we've gone paperless, so it's definitely not this bad at this point. Everything's just in PDFs online. So when you look at the promotion dossier, there are really two major components. One is one part is the components that the candidate, that is you, provide. And the other part are the components that are provided by the department. So as the candidate for promotion, you are expected to have an updated CV, personal statement, your teaching hours for both the clinician, educator, and clinical tracks, your evaluations of teaching, and a list of suggested referees. So these are considered the candidate list of referees. The department is expected to have a letter from the chair and the division chief in support of the promotion, the department promotions committee report, the sample letter that's sent to any referees that are solicited, referee letters. And so the referee letters are compiled by the department promotion committee. And in addition to those that you provide as a candidate as suggested referees, the department also chooses potential referees to send in letters. And then finally, evaluations. So here are some tips around your curriculum vitae. So first of all, use the Brown format. It's available at the BioMed Faculty Administration website. It is very high level, and so you can really use it as a template to then give more specificity to the things that you want to include in your CV. But it's definitely it's the fundamental starting point for where you're going to place various components of your CV. Above all, I recommend that you sort of step back and think about your CV and how you can make any reviewer's job easier. So make it easy for a reviewer to find things in your CV that address whether or not you've met the criteria for appointment or promotion. And think about your referees are going to be people who, they may be colleagues in other departments at Brown, but they may also be individuals who don't know you very well. They may be at other institutions. And so the easier you can make their work of reviewing your CV, the better. So to that end, first, be sure that you highlight your name on publications so they know where in the list of authors you sit. If you do have research activities, certainly include the granting agency, your role in the grant, and the dollar amount of the grant. Be sure to separate your presentations into local, regional, national, and international. And this is really important because a number of, what might look like local presentations, so maybe it was something you did at the Warren Alpert Medical School, was actually a national presentation. So it was a national meeting that was held here at the medical school. So that's why listing what category the presentation fits into is really, really important. And particularly since, you're going to be wanting to demonstrate that you have either a regional or national reputation when you go up for promotion to associate or full professor. Organize your professional organizations into the activities that you've had in those organizations, listing your role. And this can be really helpful for reviewers to see how you've progressed in that professional organization to more leadership roles. After you've put your CV together, get some feedback from colleagues, certainly from your chief, the promotion committee, and your chair, to be sure that you're on track, that your CV is appropriately organized and you've included everything that should be included. And then finally, it can be really helpful to have somebody who's been recently promoted to look over your CV, just to give you some tips about, where they included things and how best to present your work. In terms of the teaching components that you'd want to include in your CV, be sure that you record all of your teaching, advising, and mentoring activities and the titles of those activities. List any of your advisees and mentees. Certainly include the role that you had in any course or rotation. If you can, include the dates, numbers of, and types of learners who participated in those rotations or courses. Certainly be sure to include any of the teaching awards that you've received. Include your evaluations for classes, lectures, and presentations. And if you've done presentations outside of your teaching activities at Brown, be sure to include those as well. They can be very helpful. If you've had any scholarship resulting from teaching, advising, and or mentoring, be sure to include that. Some faculty members actually highlight the names of their advisees and mentees if they've published with them, and that can be very helpful. And then certainly if you've developed any curriculum, include that in your CV as well. So in terms of your teaching, mentoring, and advising evaluations, it's really important for you to keep a file of all your evaluations. It's perhaps a little bit easier now that evaluations are not done widely on paper, but more on electronic platforms. So the medical students have used the OASIS platform, and then New Innovations or eValue for the GME programs. Again, include any evaluations from invited presentations or from advisees and mentees where you might have gotten them. Ask for the program administrator's help when you're trying to compile your evaluations. And if you can, do that in real time, because it might feel like a heavy lift when you try to do it right before your promotion. But they certainly can help you with putting those evaluations together for your promotion dossier. Again, you may not be doing research, but if you are doing research, be sure to include all of your original research publications. Again, your research grants and all of the specifics about those grants, and any research trainees that you've had. The referee letters are an important part of your CV, and their purpose is really to provide an objective and unbiased assessment regarding your regional, national, international reputation in the field. So if you think about when you're asking people to be, or you're not asking them, but when you're including the list of potential referees, think about their ability to really comment on your reputation and importance to the field. They must be at your promotion rank or higher. So if you're going for associate, they need to be at associate or full. And if you're going for full, they need to be full professors. The referees might not know you very specifically, but they're provided with your entire dossier for their review. So they will be looking at all of the materials that you have submitted. The personal statement is another component of your dossier, and this is the one where probably there's the most difference of opinion about what it should be, but I'm going to give you my opinion since I have the floor right now and I can do that. So my thinking about the personal statement is it's always best if you sort of tell the story of your career path. Think of it as a biographical essay. Certainly keep it brief, 2 pages at a max, and that doesn't mean you can, lower the font to 5 and jam it into 2 pages. So have it be reasonable font as well. Explain what might not be clear from your CV. So I always think a personal statement is best when it is not just, putting your CV to music, but rather it gives us more depth about you as an individual and the work that you do than we might be able to glean from your CV. Help the reader understand who you are, what you do, what gives you joy in your career. And when you do that, remember your track. So if you're on the clinical track and you use your personal statement to speak about how much joy you get from doing research and never mention the joy you get from clinical work and clinical teaching, people might wonder if you're on the right track. So, review your personal statement through the lens of the track that you're in. You can certainly enjoy research and be on a clinical track, but one would expect that you would also focus on your work in the clinical arena. Present your goals, your aspirations, and how you hope to realize them. So, the promotion is a bet on you going forward, as well as a retrospective sort of appreciation of the work that you've done. And again, remember which track you're on. And then finally, remember your track. So just, I can't emphasize that enough, really, that that having the personal statement reflect your track is really, really important. So the promotion timeline can feel like it's really taking too long, but I liken this to making sourdough bread. A lot of people started making sourdough bread during the pandemic. And there's the active time, and then there's the inactive waiting time. And so the amount of time that you're actually active in the promotions process is not that long. So the putting the dossier together, it may feel long. What is long is the time when things are working behind the scenes, where your department promotion committee is pulling together the referee letters. So that's the inactive waiting time that can take a long time. So what are the steps? So first, you, the candidate, and the department chair, division director, decide if the time is right for your promotion. You confirm your track. This is a time where it's really good to review with your division chief, your department chair, whether you're on the right track. And we do see people making a decision to switch tracks at this point. At that time, you are informed about the departmental deadlines and start to prepare your documents. So update your CV, think about referees. The department promotion committee usually does a preliminary review to give you the green light to go ahead. And at that point, the promotion committee department chair will inform you that you've gotten the green light and you can go forward with the process. The department then solicits the referee letters for the approved candidates. And as I say, that can take a long time. So typically that's something that's happening often in the summertime. So they're taking your names that you provide and the names that that they have come up with, and then they're soliciting those letters. The department promotion committee then reviews the completed dossier and recommends the candidate to the chair. The department submits the completed dossier to the Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotions. And then CMFA reviews the dossiers and votes on the promotion. So to allay your fears, this is not what CMFA is all about. They're not like playing cards behind closed doors, but this is what CMFA is all about. So there are 8 members of the Committee on Medical Faculty Appointments and Promotion. They have to be at the full professor rank in the medical academic tracks or the campus-based tenure tracks. Each of the members serves a 3-year term. 5 of the members come from the medical academic faculty and clinical departments. 1 of the members of CMFA is from the biology departments. 1 is from public health, and 1 is from another university department, not biology or public health. So we have had archaeologists, historians on CMFA. So as you're thinking about your dossier and your CV, it's something, and your personal statement, sometimes it's good to think that there's going to be, a diverse group of people who will be looking at that dossier and weighing in on your promotion. CMFA reviews all senior level promotions and appointments in the clinical departments. It meets throughout the academic year. All members read your dossier and formulate questions for the department chair. The department chair then presents your dossier, answers questions, and makes any clarifications that are needed. At that point, so this is just sort of the overall process. So you've got the work that the department promotions committee does, and then the chair, and then the recommendation to CMFA. CMFA then votes. After CMFA votes, this is when I have a conversation with the chair of the department, letting the chair know that they may inform you as the candidate that CMFA has approved your promotion, but then it needs to go to the dean and the provost for their approval as well and the president before you'll get a letter. So after CMFA votes, the dean of biology and medicine reviews it. Then I present to the provost. The president reviews the action. At that point is when BMFA will send you a letter saying that with the anticipated approval of the corporation, your promotion has been approved. So the final step is the Brown Corporation approval before you can actually use the new title, which is typically July 1st of the subsequent year. So that's the end of sort of this formal presentation. And I want to end on an encouraging note and say that first of all, you're here, you're at this promotion workshop. So congratulations to you in taking the interest in your promotion. And we are here to help you. I mean, your departments are here to help you. BMFA is here to support you and get you through this. And so we are more than happy to do what we can to make this process as easy as possible and to be able to recognize the excellent work that you do. So I am going to try my best to stop sharing my screen. I think I did it. I did, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I am going to ask so we have our panelists who are going to be, they're joining us, they are here. And so first of all, I want to thank our panelists so much for being with us. Again, it's terrific to have them here to be able to share their experiences around the promotions process. And I am going to call them out individually. I see Penny Dennehy, and Tracy O'Leary Tevya, and Deborah Myers, and Matt Bolton. Correct? Yeah, there you are. Okay. So I am going to have, first of all, I am going to have each of you introduce yourselves and share what your role is in the promotions process. And so I will start with Penny.
Okay. So I am the chair of the Department of Pediatrics Promotion Committee, something that I have been doing for, I don't even know how many years, but quite a few years. So I have a fair amount of experience in talking to various faculty members about promotion and advising and helping people along the way. So I know in our department, we try very hard to actually have a system where everybody gets a review, even if they're not up for promotion. We consider ourselves both promotion and academic review committee. So we have a set schedule where people, after they finish their first term at assistant professor, do get a review, and then we make plans with them from there. And, otherwise, I think, as far as questions and all go, I will just leave it at that. And I'm happy to answer questions from my experience of many years.
Great. Thanks, Penny. And next I'll have Tracy O'Leary Tevya introduce herself. Did I pronounce your name right?
You did
Okay,
perfectly.
great.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tracy O'Leary Tevya. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. I'm the chief psychologist at the Providence VA. I am the chair of the Clinical Faculty Appointments, Reappointments, and Promotions Committee for the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. I was recently appointed chair this year upon the retirement of one of our colleagues. And prior to that, I was a member of that committee for the past 6 years. So I'm happy to answer any and all questions related to promotion process for those of you in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior. And what I will say is that I'm very lucky. We have a fantastic committee, and all of whom are very, very invested in ensuring that the promotion process is as smooth and painless as possible, and works very hard to ensure that not only do we identify people who are ready for promotion, but that we actively support and promote that by working with their service chiefs. So thank you for having me today.
Well, thanks for being here, Tracy. Next, Deb Myers.
Hi, evening. I am Deb Myers. I'm in Department of OBGYN. I'm the vice chair, and I've been chair of promotions committee for OBGYN for almost about 10 years. Our department is not as large as maybe some of the others. Our promotions committee meets 3 to 4 times a year. Similar maybe to pediatrics, we have a process where we review the entire roster of the faculty once a year. It's usually in the summer. So we try to identify people who maybe we think are ready for promotion, reach out to them. I do a lot of mentoring in terms of, finding a career path, as well as how to rearrange your CV to get everything in the right category in that, and to work with faculty who are interested in, being promoted. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Deb. And Matt Bolton.
Yep. Hi, I'm Matthew Bolton. I am the manager of academic affairs. I work in CMFA with Shelley. My main role is supporting the CMFA. I am the main point of contact between your department administrators and CMFA. I collect your dossiers. My role is to make sure all the pieces are in place, offer any suggestions to the department, and little tweaks here and there to make your dossier clean and ready to go for a review. I'm here to answer any nuts and bolts questions you might have about the process, about your dossier, and I'm happy to help out.
Thanks, Matt. And Matt does an amazing job sort of keeping us all in line, so and making things smoothly. So thank you, Matt. So I am going to kick it off with asking all of you to share maybe one of your favorite tips around the promotion process. So when you talk to a faculty member who is contemplating promotion, what is, sort of one tip that you give them as they're embarking on this? So Deb, I see you nodding, so I'll cold call you first.
Okay, no problem. So for me, when I have a faculty person comes to me, or our vice chair of the committee as well, I try to look at what the person's track is, obviously, but also kind of take a look at what already is on the CV. My experience is that the person has done a lot more work than what is written down, and it's important to the faculty person to capture everything that you do. It's hard to keep track of all the lectures you've given, the students you've mentored, but it's really important to keep kind of a running log at some, electronic log. It used to be a paper log, but, of what you do on a daily basis, especially those who are very clinically busy. So I try to kind of make sure people have captured everything that they've done. The next thing that I try to do is look for the theme, and people often have a path or, a passion, something that they really enjoy doing, and see how that kind of fits together as well, and try to, see if that can be cultivated to the regional level, if not national level as well. So that's kind of recording everything you do, and then seeing what is holding it together and what you really like to do on a daily basis. And that's usually, for me, I find a path of success.
Tracy, how about you?
Sure. Well, I have a number of thoughts, but I guess one of the big ones, certainly for our clinical faculty, is the worry that some people have about trying to identify referees at the outside letters. And so I think it's really useful to keep in mind that any of your, committee work that you do on the regional or national level, those are potential letter writers for you. If you've done manuscript, reviews, potentially those are people who could be letter writers for you. Sometimes people forget about that and may pass off on reviewing manuscripts thinking, oh, I don't have the time, et cetera. But I always encourage people to do it because I think it's a good investment in your time. And also it could serve you well when you're looking for somebody to write a letter, thinking about the names that you have to provide. Also, again, just to echo what was said earlier, trying to make sure you capture all of the work that you're doing. More and more people are getting involved in mass media, going on podcasts, that sort of thing. Again, that gets you on a more like regional and national level in terms of putting yourself out there. So remembering to mark those things on your CV and highlight those, I think, is very important. And then certainly with the personal statement that you'd be asked to write as part of the promotion, I think it's just to pick up on the joy factor, talk about the passion that you have for what you do and the reasons why you're doing what you're doing in your career. And that will shine through in your personal statement, and it will help guide towards the things that you need to highlight, and also what your contribution is to the department, and let your enthusiasm and your passion shine through that letter, because that will be the thing that really gets people and want, like, oh gosh, this person has been working so hard and is doing so many wonderful things and has contributed so much. Of course, it makes, no brainer that this person is meriting promotion. So, so put some thought into that personal statement, because it does make a big difference. So.
Great, thank you. How about you, Penny?
So a couple of very simple things. Acronyms in your CV. Most people outside your field have no clue what NGPD means or whatever. So please spell those things out, because it's helpful to people. I've served on CMFA, and it is very hard if you have to keep going and looking up, what is this organization? Is it a national organization? What does it do? So try not to use those initials on your CV. Try and spell out what this organization is and what your role is, because many people forget that if you're going to be documenting a national or a regional or a national reputation, just belonging to an organization isn't going to do it. You're going to have to document that you do something that makes you recognizable, a committee member, on a task force. Those are the sorts of things. And in my experience over the years, the people on the clinician educator track in particular struggle to get a regional and national reputation. And those are the things that you need to be thinking about. What organizations do you belong to? Which ones have you potential to do something of interest to you? Is there a committee that you'd like to serve on? Most organizations would love to have people on committees. They're always seeking people who have an interest and a desire to serve as committee members. I know from my own field, pediatric infectious disease, that we love to get people onto committees, even younger people, because we want a spectrum of our membership. So think about that, and don't be joining just because you think you need to. Join the things that really matter to you. And you'll find that you also, by cultivating that kind of relationship, then you have people who can write letters for you as a referee, because they've served on a committee with you. They know what your passions are. They know you're a hard worker. They can document that. The other thing about CVs, please read them over, have somebody else read them over. Make sure you do not have typos or mistakes, because those really say to the people that are reviewing you, and the outside reviewers in many cases are seeing your CV and don't know you really well. And if your CV has typos or incorrect documentation of a publication, that is going to send a bad message about your diligence and your ability to be the kind of person that we would want to promote. Let's see, teaching evaluations. We have struggled in my department with teaching evaluations from our residents, especially during the pandemic. We have very few. And so if you've mentored or advised or worked with students, undergraduate students, graduate students, medical students, residents, sometimes having them provide documentation of what you've meant to their career is helpful if we're not getting enough formal documentation from evaluations from teaching activities. Those mentoring activities and advising activities are important. And the other thing that I always tell people is to make sure that they're on your CV. There is no place in that template that tells you where to put them. We always say to people, usually under the teaching activities at the end of your CV is a great place to list your advisees, mentees, and what role you may have played in there and what they may be doing now. So if somebody's gone on to be a faculty member, and you've been their career advisor, that is actually impactful. So listing that and at the end of your CV is very useful, I think, and for these particular tracks and document where we really are looking for people who have real expertise in teaching and advising and mentoring, making sure that you do that. So I could go on for quite a long time because I've been doing this for a while, but I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. You have been doing it for quite a long time. It's a lot of expertise there. So Matt, are you okay with me going on to the questions that we're getting that are coming in?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, sure.
Is that all right? So
Yeah.
I am now going to introduce Alex Kelleher, who is the director of the Office of BioMed Faculty Administration. And Alex has been monitoring the chat questions and also had the questions that were submitted prior to today. So Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Yes, we've definitely already been getting in a bunch of questions, so I think our timing is great. The first one, I think we could get a couple of different perspectives on. Shelley, I think it would be great to hear from you, but then also from our departments, because it's related to our coming approach for DEI efforts and DEI activities. And someone is wondering how those, may contribute to teaching or service requirements, or how those are being incorporated into everyone's assessment as we look towards the future when they'll be officially adopted.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we thought about when the working group was deliberating and when we presented to the advisory bodies. And that's why we compiled the metrics where you could actually see examples of things that you might be doing in those various domains. It's easy, some things are relatively easy if you're doing health disparities research. That's clearly an activity that would qualify. If you're taking care of an underserved population, you may be working in the Rhode Island Free Clinic. You might be working with underrepresented in medicine learners. So there are just a variety of ways. Like any of our standards and criteria, they're very high level and not very specific. And where I think this question is coming from is, what are the department promotions committees going to be expecting in terms of evidence of this commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I'm actually making my way through some of the departments to really sort of talk through that. And so I think in the next couple of years, we'll have, more clarity. And my expectation would be that departments would actually develop their own metrics around DEI activities. But I'd be happy to hear from others if people have additional or other thoughts. I think this is really a work in progress, but I do encourage people to look at those metrics. And as I say, I think I'm meeting with the Department of Medicine Promotion Committee. I'm hoping to do that next month to talk more about this. And happy to go to any department faculty meetings or promotion committee meetings.
This is Deb. I just know for our OBGYN department, we have now put the DEI activities as part of the yearly academic review to start getting people to starting to think about this, on a regular basis, whether or not they want promotion. But I would also think that DEI work, whether or not it was teaching or research, would still be a contributing factor towards promotion. So that's, I guess, my question. is DEI work, would not necessarily have to involve research, but it could. Right. Okay.
It could.
Okay.
Yes.
That's-
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to. And that's why we really did break it down, and it's
Right.
actually by track. So we tried to choose things that would be relevant to the track.
Okay.
Tracy, did you want to add anything on? I saw you came off of mute, or you just ready for the next question?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, for Department of Psychiatry, it's been recently established by the department that for individuals who are interested in appointment, reappointment, promotion, they have to have completed, I believe I can't remember, it's a certain number of hours of specific training in DEI issues and specific training in anti-racism activity. So that's already part of what the Department of Psychiatry has put in place. And then there are, as some people know, our department has been very active in this area and has a myriad number of committees and subgroups available. So our faculty are well aware of not only this importance, but also the opportunities that they have to get directly involved on the departmental level to address this issue.
Great.
That's great. If we're all right, I'd love to move on to the next question because we definitely have some, coming in. And one question that we received both in the chat today, but also from our submitted questions before the presentation, common type of question that we get each year refers to the referee list. And can this include colleagues that that we've worked with directly before you, whether it be co-authors on publications, served on committees, previously worked with at a different institution? What's the guidance on referees?
I'll weigh in if somebody else doesn't want to weigh in. Penny, do you want to?
Yeah, I can weigh in. I think, as we choose referees for the department, we usually choose people who are in the field, but not people that you necessarily have worked with. And we expect that when you choose your own list of referees, that some of them will be people that you have worked with. We specifically don't want relatives, people that you've spent a lot of time with, essentially, who wouldn't be an objective referee. So that's what we want you to think about, is who is going to be able to be objective about you. And people that you've often been on a committee with or written a paper with are usually not somebody that is intimately involved in your life on a day-to-day basis. So that's sort of the way I think about it.
Yeah, I would also add too that, again, there's so much overlap that sometimes it's hard to identify referees outside of, committee work, et cetera. I know for our department, we would consider whether that referee has anything to gain from your promotion. So for instance, if you serve as a study therapist or a co-I on a grant that person is also on, ostensibly that person could gain from you being promoted. So things like that, if there's no possibility that the person will gain from your promotion, then that's something to consider too.
Well, I think also the other thing is that for these tracks, you can choose people within the Brown community, which is not true for the academic tracks. And so good referees are often people that you've clinically worked with to care for patients, because they can specifically talk to your clinical skills and sometimes your teaching skills as well.
Yeah.
Great. Another question we've gotten is, as someone who's recently transferred from another institution, can all of my work from my previous institution go onto my Brown CV? So it's, presentations, mentees, publications, etc.
I'm going to let Matt take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage you. The committee is going to look at the entirety of your career, not just where, from when you were recruited to Brown. Like if you could keep a portfolio of any evaluations you may have from prior institutions, if they're available, hold on to those and yeah, hand them off to your program or department administrator to include in your dossier. The committee likes to see, you know, your career over time and your improvement over time. So yes, that's encouraged.
Great. Deb.
The only other comment I'll make is, yes, all that work would be included on your CV. Myself personally, I would look at the last time you were promoted, okay? You know, and from that point on, that work would be looked at, you know, prior to being an assistant professor, you know, would not necessarily work for you to, you know, becoming professor or something like that. I think the only other thing that I would make a comment on is that we also would want to make sure that being clinical track that your teaching evaluations are, you know, robust and present as well for your current work now at Brown. So it may not be an immediate, you know, transition, but it might be a year delay just to ensure that, you know, activity is still happening, you know, once you've arrived within the Brown system.
And
So,
most other institutions will not give us teaching evaluations. At least that's been my experience. So
yep.
you're going to have to amass your teaching evaluations from the time you arrived here.
Yes.
All right. A question about mentees and advisees. Could you give any examples, you know, on both sides of the coin, you know, what types of learners may qualify as a mentee or an advisee, and any suggestions as to those who would not through your review, in terms of who to be listing or who not to list?
I can't think of who not to list if you've mentored or advised anybody ranging from an undergraduate student, a high school student, a medical student, a resident, a fellow. To me, anyone who's a teacher is demonstrating their teaching skills no matter what level of advisee or mentee that you have. And so if you're working with high school students, for example, that's service to the community. That does count toward your promotion. So to me, and I can't think of too many situations. The thing that we don't usually look at or bother with, if you're working, say, as the school doc for a school system, that is service to the community, but it's not a major teaching role or other thing of that sort. It does give you some credit towards service to our community, but or you know, you're the leader of a Boy Scout. I can remember one dossier where the person's claim to teaching was that he was the head of a Boy Scout troop. That would not do it, I think, as far as our committee and a role in active role in teaching.
Great, thank you. I know that we are tight on time, but there's two kind of global questions that I would love to, you know, discuss as a full group before we head into our breakouts. So to try and keep things moving, the first one is that it seems as though those who are kind of self-advocating, self-promoting are the ones who always kind of get to the top of the list in terms of who's getting the attention to go through the promotion process. So any advice that you could give to folks to help make sure that they are being, you know, reviewed and considered and kind of not left, I suppose, behind in terms of getting the attention for promotion?
There are two things that I can offer. One, we've intentionally within the Department of Pediatrics Promotion Committee we actually set up a whole database of all of our faculty. We know when your appointment ends and we make sure we review you at the end of your first term. So everyone gets a review. And then we also keep up with the people we've reviewed. Somebody on the promotions committee serves as their essentially promotion mentor. And that person is available for the mentee to check back in and make sure that they are on target and that they get placed on a review process for the committee once they've done the things that were advised. As a promotions chair, I actually find the squeaky wheel people annoying in some ways because they're trying to jump the line in many cases. And we've been trying to be very fair about the people that are most ready are going to be the ones that we put up first. The people that are less ready, we're going to put up second and third and fourth. So we try very much to be fair from the promotion side. That doesn't mean that if you think that you should be promoted, that you don't go to your division chief and talk about promotion. And from there, the division chief and you can talk with the promotions committee and advocate that you get a promotion review. But that's the way to do it, I think, is to work through your division chief and or as a promotions chair, I sit down with a lot of people and go through what they're where they stand and help them look through their CVs and all. So that's the other route you can go as well.
And I agree totally, Penny. I would add that there is a self-assessment form on the BioMed Faculty Administration website, and it's organized by track and rank to which you aspire to be promoted. And so fill that self-assessment form out and then, have that meeting with your division chief, department chair, or promotion committee chair, which reminds me of something that I just want to be sure we can, because we're probably going to have to end this part of our presentation soon, but Gada Borgelli is on the meeting, I see, and Gada has organized a panel discussion that's happening. Gada, can you tell us exactly the date? It's in a couple of Mondays, right?
Yep, this will be happening November 21st at 5 p.m. And we're working on a hybrid meeting. So we'll have an in-person and a remote option. So we'll be streaming and hopefully we'll be recording the meeting as well so that could be available. And we'll have some chairs as panelists, and we're going to invite chairs of promotions committee. But as soon as we have all the details about how to attend or if you're going to attend remotely, we'll send you all that information. So the more people that can attend and talk about their own experiences, the better. We would love that.
Yeah, and I just thought that this question in particular, because, I think your goal is to have departments talk about best practices, where departments might be able to share their best practices with others.
Yeah, and Phyllis is one of our panelists, so she can talk about the Department of Pediatrics. And Penny, if you can attend, that would be awesome since you have the firsthand experience.
Sure.
And I will be sending you all those details soon.
Great, thanks, Gada. So Alex, I'll turn it over to you to see if we have time for one more question or if we should move on.
Sure. No, this is the age-old question. Why get promoted? Might help with salary negotiations, more access to resources, get yourself known a little bit more for maybe talks, but what is the benefit, or what are the benefits to getting promoted?
This is one of those questions that if, I would actually encourage people to bring it over into the breakout groups as well, to hear from the facilitators what they're, because I know, I think this was a topic of conversation at the CFAC meeting last week. Was it not?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of reasons, and they're all very individual. And it's pretty hard to answer that question generally.
I
always say, do it for your parents, do it for your kids, do it for your partner.
I was just going to make the comment. I get this question like, why should I bother? And it's really a confirmation or validation of all the work that you have done. It's like a graduation certificate almost in some level, but you really do it for yourself or for, acknowledging all your work.
It's great. I think that's a great way to end, because ultimately that's what this is all about, is that you actually get recognized for the important and excellent work that you do. So I am going to thank our panelists so much for taking the time and sharing all of your expertise around promotions. I think the work that you do is so important. And as I say, you know, you're doing all this work to support our faculty and to recognize the work that they do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So at this point, we are going to shift gears a little bit, and we are going to go into the breakout sessions. And we have 2 breakout sessions, one for the clinical track, one for the clinician educator track. And I want to thank our facilitators of those sessions. For the clinical track, we have Gary Bubley and Keith Callahan, who will be facilitating that discussion. And on the clinician educator track, we have Linda Nietzsche and Steve Murnoff, who will be facilitating that discussion. So I guess now we're going to have just a very brief break for you to self-select your breakout room. And if you have any difficulties, I've been told that BMFA staff will be on the Zoom to help escort you virtually into whichever room you need to go into. Is that correct, Alex?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So now the magic happens, right? And I should also just say that you know, if there were questions that we didn't get to now, and please do bring them into the breakout groups. And if anything remains unanswered, you know, we have this panel discussion that God is organizing for a couple of weeks from now. And also you can shoot us an email if anybody in BMFA would be more than happy to assist you. So with that, thanks for attending this portion of the workshop. Thanks everyone for participating. And now we go into some sort of cyberspace.
Are the rooms showing up for anyone?
I'm not seeing them, Heather,
Okay.
No.
but I just assumed it was me.